Talking with May Pang, who is in town for the Fab Four Festival, which will be here in Nashville at the Cannery Ballroom on Friday and Saturday. Her new book is Instamatic Karma. She did a book in 1983 called Loving John. It's a very good read, too, of all the things that happened during that period of time. Let's talk about this book, though, the Instamatic Karma photos. A couple of them that are really getting a lot of attention is one of them of historic value. John signing the dissolution documents, I guess you would call it,
yes,
of Beatles Incorporated.
Yeah, I know. It was supposed to be signed in New York along with Paul and George when George was doing his Dark Horse tour. And we were all supposed to meet. And, of course, here we are. And Ringo had already signed it because he didn't want to be, the Beatles were in the middle of another lawsuit, and he didn't want to come in to be subpoenaed. So he already signed it, but he was on the phone. And at the last minute, John's lawyer calls up and says, well, where's John? He's supposed to be down here. And I said, I got news for you. He ain't coming. And there was silence. He goes, okay. And John got on the phone. He says, there's a few things on there I'm not happy about, and I don't want to come down. I don't want to sign. And he said, okay. And he went back in the room and told the other guys. Paul was already there. Linda was there. George was there. And George just hit the roof. But at the end of the day, Paul and Linda came by the next morning and to ask John what was wrong. And he says, there's a few things in here I just didn't want to do. And he says, okay, we'll try and work it out. And it did. And the picture that you see is John inking his signature on one of the many papers that he had to sign for the dissolution. And we did it in Disney World because we were there with Julian. It was Christmas, and we had to sign it before the year was out. And it was fun at the Polynesian Hotel.
Wow. It's ironic because I think a lot of us have always thought it was John who probably was the most anxious to get out of the Beatles, but he was actually the last one.
Right. I think it's what you call he started the band, he ended the band.
Exactly. Now tell me some more about the photos. Tell me about your cameras.
Oh, well, a lot of people thought I took these photos with my Instamatic. No, it was a few, about 10% of it is Polaroids, but the rest of it was done with my 35mm Nikon camera.
I saw someone at a show the other night, one of our shows with a Polaroid. I haven't even seen one of those in years. It must be an antique.
It's antique. Now, I still have mine, the one that, as you can see on the cover, that John has. So it's great. Someone, I loaned my Instamatic, my Nikon, actually, to someone, to another photographer. And unfortunately, his loft got broken into, and my camera went with it.
Wow.
So...
One of the things I learned reading your books is that there was something that almost happened in 1975, and one just has to wonder what would have become of it if the plans that you and John had to go down to New Orleans to meet up with Paul and Linda. I guess this was when Paul and Linda were doing Venus and Mars. I think That's about the time period. So was that planned to be any kind of working deal or just vacation, holiday? What was that going to be?
Well, I think, we had been seeing Paul and Linda quite a lot in New York at this point. And John was feeling good. And having signed, it's kind of weird, but, having signed the contract to dissolve the Beatles, and it was over, it gave him a newer, another relationship with the guys, his brothers. And he just looked at me one day, and, I turned around, I was doing something, and he said, I got to ask you something. And I said, what? He goes, what do you think if I started to write with Paul again? And I whipped my head around like The Exorcist, here's Linda Blair, turned my head, and I go, what? And I said, I think it'd be great. And he said, why? And I said, well, maybe because you two don't have a contract, and on top of that, when you're solo, you guys are good, but when the two of you are together, there's magic that you can't be beaten.
Yeah, that's right. We talk about how you're part of the Beatles family, and there are probably other members of the Beatles family or the Beatles circle that you've come in contact with and maybe you're close to. I know for a fact that Julian, Cynthia.
Yes. They actually wrote the back passage for me on the back of the book, as well as Larry Kane, who did his book, Lennon Revealed, and he wrote the foreword. In fact, I have love from Cynthia for everyone. She just called me just a little while ago, and just to wish me a happy birthday and some other stuff that happened. So.
Hey, too bad she can't be here, right?
I know. The next time.
Yeah. May Pang is here in Nashville for the Fab Four Festival, which is Friday and Saturday at the Cannery Ballroom. And you're going to be on this thing called a panel discussion called The Women Behind the Beatles with Louise Harrison, who will be with me here tomorrow afternoon. Nancy Lee Andrews, who was Ringo's fiancée for a while, and Kathy Molland, Joey Molland's wife. Do you know these women?
I know them well, especially Nancy, because John and I introduced Nancy to Ringo. And to Ringo, yes, and it was back then, and John was pushing it, So, Kathy, I was with Kathy when she went over for the first time to see Joey Mullen back in England. So, I mean, they had been dating, and she came over and she says, "Oh, I was thinking about going out to England, surprising Joey," and she never left.
Wow. Now, this panel discussion of the women behind the Beatles will be on Saturday afternoon. Are you going to be there at the festival the other times, or?
Yeah, I'll be all around. I'll be selling my books, signing my books, doing whatever. I'll be there.
Excellent.
Everybody should come on down.
Oh, absolutely. I'm sure the fans will love to meet you and love to get their hands on your book and get you to sign it while you're here.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks for doing this.
My pleasure.
It's a great document of that period of time and shows John being very happy, I think.
Thank you.
All right, May Pang, you can see her yourself at the Fab Four Festival this Friday and Saturday at the Cannery Ballroom. Thanks again. Let me play the song that you're on. How about that? Let's do Number 9 Dream, okay?
Absolutely.